And good evening. Welcome to the Dominance Academy. I'm your professor, Mr. Justin. Hope you got your notebooks, but there will be no quiz. You don't want my quizzes. My tests are severe. And my little one, she has not been tested yet, but soon. But yeah, that's a good topic for I gotta write that down. Testing for collars, right? Because there's girls who can be submissive, then there's your submissive, and then there's an owned submissive. Girls who can be submissive, they could just kind of like get into the headspace. They can get into the headspace. They can do the things, feel the feels. But when she's your submissive, she's kind of in that headspace all the time. And then to be an owned submissive is then making a pledge. And there's usually a ceremony involved. There's a permanent collar that is attached. And oftentimes, but not all the time, there's witnesses or a witness and signed documents and that whole thing, just to make it feel more official. Obviously, there's no actual legal standing or power, but it kind of like makes the narrative stronger, and for the people who believe in it, like myself, it has even stronger bond than marriage. These days, like, marriage is almost a joke. Like, it can mean things to the people, but just generally, culturally, I think the importance and the sanctity of marriage has been lost. And I think that's not because the institution has changed, but I think just people have changed. And they no longer bring themselves as they should. But I find that in BDSM, in collaring and ownership, they absolutely are. And they still are, always have been. When people bring themselves to that position of saying, I want to be owned, and the other person saying, I want to own. And, bringing their full selves to that commitment. And it's a whole, it seems like a much deeper process. And, as I was kind of creating my ceremony and the statements that were to be said and all that stuff, it dawned on me that this is probably how marriage was a long time ago, where basically people were pledging themselves to each other. And it really had nothing to do with the state. It had nothing to do with local government or, your region or whatever, what the lands, the kingdom you were in, whatever. But it had more so to do with the spirit and the commitment and the conviction that people were bringing to that union. And I think this is what's lost on people today. I think not only do they have a difficult time and an inability to commit to one another, there is a difficulty in committing to oneself. Yeah, there's a great difficulty in committing to oneself. People lack conviction in their own beliefs, the things that they stand for. They don't even know what they stand for. They just kind of borrow from whatever media tells them or whatever they were raised in. And this is not really about you. This is just stuff that you adopted over time, and nothing really unique to you. What am I doing here? Let's go there. Okay. Just checking my sound, making sure everything's copacetic. Hey, what's up, Money Mitch? Yeah, you like, oh, the thumbnail. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not GPT, but Midjourney. I think they're on version 7 or 8. It's gotten so fucking good. And so I just put in my prompt, and then you can have style guides or like this Omni thing where it can gather likeness from a person. The style guide is just any piece of artwork or a photo or anything. And then there's like movie stills and whatever. And I just chose, like a famous artist from the golden age of illustrators. It's probably the best time period for American illustration, and put it in there. And that was the output with those bright colors. Yeah, I really like it. Yep. Well, thank you, sir. And if anyone noticed my backdrop here, it's a lovely image of a girl who is kneeling on dried rice and licking her dom's shoes. And boy, if you've ever knelt on dried rice, you'll know that it's fairly painful, but not excruciating pain, just enough. It's enough. So, yeah, it's back to what I was saying about the commitment and the conviction. It's definitely lost on people, especially men. Absolutely lost on them, of like what they believe in, and they take their beliefs from other people, because they're looking for that. They're looking for that daddy. They're looking for dad to show up and give them guidance. Like that's why Jordan Peterson's book like sold so well, because it was basically, here's the dad you never had giving you the directions for life. And that's cool and all. Like I appreciate that, but ultimately those things should be coming from yourself. Every answer that you need resides inside you. I mean, if it's something technical, like, how to change the alternator on a 71 Chevy, like it's not going to be in there. You're going to have to get out of the instruction manual. But the answers about yourself are all inside you, just waiting. You just have to play the archaeologist. Get out your little chisel, your little brush to brush away the little dust and dirt, and make your way to the bones of your core, and everything's in there. Just got to get past the insecurity, the pain, the fear, the ego, the pride. Simple stuff. But yeah, so tonight we're going to be talking a little about becoming a dom, and not just any dom, how to be a good dom, because it's important. And I think like a lot of people don't really understand what it means, and it's no slight on anyone, really. It's not a bad thing to be ignorant. Okay. It's a bad thing to remain ignorant. So, after you realize you're ignorant about something, and so the onus is on you to educate yourself, to relieve yourself of ignorance around certain things. And like many lifestyles, because lifestyles usually encompass a lot of different stuff, BDSM is no different, and there's a lot to it, and that doesn't really get portrayed well. Unfortunately, it's portrayed in porn, and you get the sensational stuff. But like a lot of things, I'm sure I could say, talk to any devout religious person, and they would probably say the same thing about their faith, that what you see is not necessarily what it's about. And it's something that you come to feel and understand on a level that is, you know, not beyond words, but it's a little bit difficult to put into words sometimes. And that's just the way it is. Like, I've talked to people who have had like religious awakening moments, and I was like, so how did you know? And they just kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, I just knew. It was a knowing that is like knowing I've got blue eyes. It's just that clear. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to take your word for it. Um, and so BDSM is no different, in the sense that there's things that are beyond the surface, and a lot of folks, they'll just see what's on the surface. The media will sensationalize certain things. Social media will take advantage of certain things. Um, it's jumped onto the mainstream. You see all kinds of stuff floating around on Instagram. Girls getting slapped, girls wearing collars. Um, just I don't know. Maybe they're having fun. Maybe it's in an effort to portray themselves in a certain way. There's movies. 50 Shades of Grey. Which, by the way, Christian Grey, he's not a dom. He even says so in the film. He says I'm a sadist. I'm not a dominant. So dominants can be sadists, but not all sadists are doms. And so he just likes giving pain. That's it. And then there was it Nicole Kidman in that new movie Baby Girl? And she plays this like powerful business lady, some executive, and she meets this younger guy who's he's got enough education and experience to initiate some things and kind of holds a container, but it's clear he doesn't know everything. He's not seasoned, and it's good. Like, I like the idea that they didn't portray this young man as this perfect dominant, sort of the way that they tried to portray Christian Grey as this like top guy, like he was just kind of this dude and doing the best to his ability. And he fucked up, and he lost it mentally or emotionally sometimes. And it was refreshing to see something a little bit more human. There were some dumb parts, but whatever. There's always dumb parts in movies. So yeah, we're going to be talking about how to be a good dom. And this is, it's important to know, because, the media doesn't really show this stuff. It doesn't show what it really entails. Not at all. It shows you cuffs. It shows you spanking. It shows you choking. It shows you, all kinds of sensational stuff that is, fairly common in BDSM, but that's not what it is. And that's, partially what we're going to be talking about tonight. Okay. So I've got a list here, little document that I put together on how to be a good dom. So I think the first thing for people to understand, that while control is involved in being a dom, dominance isn't about control. It's about creating containment. And it's not about being louder or stronger or more demanding. It's about being the one who holds the line when everything trembles. So the thing is that if you can remain calm, if you can stay honest, If you can learn to lead from a place of power rather than force, then you're already ahead of the curve. All right. So the first thing, there she is. How you doing, kitten? Hope you're well. Do some stretching. Not that kind of stretching. All right, so the first part here is power isn't performance. Power, this is a quote. I put some quotes of mine from these books that I'm writing. So power is not the act of striking, but the stillness that makes the blow unnecessary. And that's a quote from the Iron Litany, chapter 7, verse 3. Most men stumble into dominance in the same way they stumble into leadership, by thinking it's about control. They imagine the role means delivering orders, setting rules, making a woman obey. But being a good dom isn't a performance. It's a presence. It's not something you do. It's something you are. It's a state of being. Dominance is calm. It's grounded energy that makes her feel safe enough to surrender. It's not anger, arrogance, or manipulation. So when you know yourself and hold your ground from a place of knowing rather than resistance, her nervous system relaxes into your frame. That's when real power exchange begins, when she is called from within to follow because she trusts the steadiness she feels in you. A man tries to sound dominant by ordering his girlfriend around in bed. She goes along, but later, maybe she feels tense and not turned on. When he learns to slow down, tame his lust, and meet her eyes before speaking, her body softens without a word. That's presence replacing performance. A good dom doesn't chase control. He creates clarity. He doesn't force obedience. He inspires it. 1 second. Okay. So the next part is inner framework. The structure unseen shapes all that is seen. The steady frame within makes ruins of every kingdom built without it. Maxims of the Sovereign Path, chapter 4, verse 7. So before you lead anyone, you have to govern yourself. This is the quiet truth most men skip. The foundation of good dominance is an internal structure built on 3 pillars: presence, authority, and integrity. Presence is your ability to stay rooted, no matter what happens. Her emotions, your own doubts, you remain grounded. You don't flinch, you don't fold, you don't react. Authority isn't loud or showy. It's the gravity that comes from reliability. When you say something, it means something. When you promise something, you follow through. And integrity is the invisible shield around your dynamic. It means you're honest, you respect limits, and you never use her vulnerability for ego or punishment. During a disagreement, she may test his patience. Instead of snapping, he pauses, steadies his breath, and says, "We'll talk when you're ready." His calm resets the room. That restraint earns more respect than shouting ever could. Your energy sets the tone. If you're scattered, she'll feel unsafe. If you're stable, she'll melt. Being a good dom starts with mastering that inner state before you ever open your mouth. The next one is understanding submission. Submission is not the fall, but the alignment. The body bends only so the soul may stand upright. The Obedient Flame, chapter 3, verses 4. Excuse me. Submission is not weakness. It's deep trust. When a woman yields, she's not giving up her strength. She's offering it to someone who knows how to hold it. That's sacred ground. Your role as a dom is to receive that offering without taking it for granted. That means learning to read the subtle signals of her surrender. Her breathing, her eyes, her hesitation, her states. Sometimes her resistance isn't defiance, it's caution. She's checking if your authority can hold when things get real. She hesitates before kneeling for the first time. He notices her trembling, places a hand on her shoulder, and says, "You can stop at any time." She exhales and chooses to continue. Her submission becomes an act of trust, not pressure. A good Dom covers more than he controls. He doesn't dominate her into obedience. He creates the kind of psychological environment that makes obedience a natural reaction. He understands that surrender isn't something she gives once. It's something she renews each time she trusts him again. The next area is communication communication as command. Words are the first tether of power. Through the voice, commands takes form and silence becomes law. The Dominant Codex, chapter 5, verse 1. Words are your first tool of dominance, not the fancy ones, just the ones you use clearly, calmly, and confidently. A Dom who can't communicate is a Dom who confuses. Being a good Dom means learning to give direction without hesitation, and to do it with precision. When you tell her what you want, your voice and tone carry more weight than your words. The energy behind your speech is what she responds to. Negotiation is part of the command, too. Before any scene or structure, clarity is king. Talk about limits, aftercare, and emotions. Real dominance thrives in vulnerability. When she feels safe, she'll give you more than you could ever expect. Before a scene, he explains what will happen, checks her limits, and confirms a safe word. Later, if she uses it, he stops instantly and holds her. If she cries, then thanks him for listening. That's the command through clarity, not control. The same holds true for the dynamic as a whole. Don't just talk, listen. The best Doms hear what isn't said. They watch, notice, and adjust. Leadership in this space isn't about volume, it's about awareness. The next area is rituals and structure. Ritual is the spine of devotion, structure, the bone through which chaos learns to kneel. The Iron Litany, chapter 2, verse 6. Structure is what makes the dynamic breathe, despite belief to the contrary. A submissive relaxes when she knows what to expect, what's allowed, what's sacred, what's hers to offer. Rituals anchor that. They don't have to be elaborate. A look, a phrase, a check-in. These small patterns remind her of the hierarchy between you. They become the quiet rhythm of your bond. A good Dom creates simple frameworks. A command tone for scenes. A hands gesture for reminders. Correction of speech and posture. Sometimes it's new habits to train, or refinement of old ones. All of it is saying, "You're safe with me," due to that structure. Every evening before bed, she kneels between his legs while he runs his fingers through her hair. No sex, just stillness. It marks the shift from daily life into their private hierarchy, a ritual that tells her, "I see you, I know what you really are and where you belong." Balance matters. Intensity builds devotion, but tenderness keeps it alive. A strong hand and a gentle heart aren't opposites, they're proof of mastery. And let's go over some of the mistakes of the amateur Dom. The untempered Dom makes noise for authority and control The untempered Dom mistakes noise for authority and control for command. He governs nothing, not even himself. The Dominant Codex, chapter 1, verses 9. Every man who starts this path will stumble. The danger isn't the fall. It's not knowing what tripped you. The first mistake is needing control because you don't have it elsewhere. That kind of dominance reeks of insecurity. It makes the dynamic about your ego, not her surrender. And she feels it instantly. The second mistake is aggression. Being firm doesn't mean being cruel. Real Doms don't raise their voice to prove they have one. And third, the talkers. Some men over-explain, trying to justify their position to her as well as himself. But power doesn't explain itself. It simply is, and therefore doesn't need as many words. And the final trap is forgetting your own growth. Dominance isn't a static identity. It's a discipline that evolves. The moment you think you've arrived, you lose the privilege of your title. He once believed pain equaled dominance. After bruising her too roughly, he saw how fear instead of surrender was in her eyes. That moment taught him control isn't about how far he can push her, it's about how safely he can guide her. A good dom studies himself more than he studies his submissive. And the path forward. The path does not end at mastery. It begins there, where certainty is shed and learning becomes devotion. The Maxims of the Sovereign Path, Chapter 9, verse 12. Dominance isn't a role you graduate from. It's a practice you refine. Every scene, every misstep, every moment of connection teaches you something new about presence and restraint. Keep learning, read, observe, talk with mentors who've walked longer paths. But more importantly, watch yourself. Notice how you respond if she tests you, when you're tired, when life bleeds into your dynamic. Those are the mirrors that show you where you still leak energy. Bring your dominance into life outside the bedroom. How you would move through a crowd, how you handle conflict, how you make decisions. These are the daily reps that build your masculine gravity. The goal isn't to act dominant when the lights go red. It's to be the same man when the lights come back on. He starts journaling after each scene, what worked, what didn't, how he felt. Months later, reading back, he sees how his tone changed, how much more she trusts him. Growth becomes visible because he bothered to reflect. A woman doesn't follow because you demand it. She follows because your steadiness gives her peace. That's what separates a dom from a man who's just trying to be one. So, in closing, a good dom is a quiet mountain, steady, deliberate, unshaken by the wind of emotions. He holds himself first, so she never has to. His dominance isn't borrowed from fantasy or porn. It's forged in self-mastery, humility, and intention. Years in, he realizes he rarely raises his voice anymore. Whether at work, with friends, or with her, people simply listen. His dominance isn't limited to their scenes. It's the quiet gravity he now carries everywhere. The real art of being a dom is not about control. It's about cultivation. You're not building a puppet. You're building trust, reverence, and devotion. You lead her into surrender not by force, but by the strength of your stillness. The tyrant commands to be obeyed. The dom commands to be trusted. One seeks compliance, the other builds devotion. The Dominant Codex, Chapter 3, verse 7. When in doubt, return to this quote. Becoming a good dom isn't at the end of a journey. It's the beginning of mastery. The deeper you go, the quieter your power becomes. Lead with patience. Listen more than you command, and let your presence speak louder than any title. In time, she won't follow because she has to. She follows because with you, surrender finally feels like peace. So I hope that's making sense to you guys. Like that's pretty much it. Like that's pretty much the basics of it, you know. You might think like, well, where's the hypnosis? Where's the coming on command? Where's the, how to use toys and, spanking demonstrations and, whatever. You don't really need all that stuff. I was talking with a dom who, he's been in it for like 30 years or something like that. And he said that when he would go to play parties or dungeons or what have you, he would bring this entire duffel bag full of stuff, and it was just like all part of his mentality. And like he had to have all this gear, because it was like part of how he saw himself. And then as he progressed through, he stopped like caring so much, and he would just leave more and more at home till the point where he went to these parties and he brought nothing but himself, because that's all he needed. He realized that he needed nothing except his mind and his voice, and sometimes not even his voice. It was just in his presence and a look. And the submissives, at the dungeon or the play party or what have you, they would see this, they would feel it, and they're like, okay, this is the guy. Like, he doesn't have to show up in a black suit with leather whips. Like, that's not necessary, right? It's about your presence and how you show up, and really not being so aware of who's perceiving you, right? That's, obviously one of the biggest hurdles for people to get over is being too self-concerned, right? Which is not to be confused with self-awareness. Self-conscious is not self-awareness. Self-conscious is worry, fear. And self-awareness is, right, the opposite of that. It's having courage in the self. So, yeah, you don't really need a whole lot. It's really about, how you're showing up and what your intentions are. And that really changes things. It really does. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for, long-term stuff, even though, I'm a proponent of those things. I think that, if you're going to bring a woman into your fold, then it should be worth your time. Because I don't give away anything for free, right? Because that would be silly. So I'm certainly not going to fuck her just because she wants to, right? Just because she wants some of daddy's dick doesn't mean she's getting it. That's such a, I don't know. That's too easy. I want things to be earned, I want things to be worthwhile. And I don't like the things in my life. I don't want to do anything in my life that isn't worthwhile, where it's just a waste of time. It's dumb, This is why I don't have like gaming systems. Like, I like games, okay, but I just have like a couple of games on my phone, Clash Royale and what's the other one? What the fuck is that game? Oh, Call of Duty. But they're just a mobile version, so you don't get like really immersed in these things. Play for a couple minutes and then it's done. And so, because I don't want to sit there for hours and immerse myself in a game, because I just don't see the benefit. Like, if I want to relax, cool. But I do realize that some games are they're like art. Like, some of them are just truly amazing works. Like that one about the cat. I think it's called Stray. That game is amazing. If you've never played Stray, play Stray. Really, really good. But anyways, we're not going to be talking about games. But essentially, I like to have things that are worthwhile in my life. So because I feel that way about my personal sphere, anyone coming into that, that's like how the machine is running over here. So I'm not going to change things simply because, this girl's really cute, or simply because she's really cute, or she really wants to, have my dick in one of her holes or all of her holes. Like, it's not, that's not enough. Right? It's okay, cool. And like, how are you going to get there? How bad do you want that? And then in the process of this, of like the lure of like, how bad do you want that, right? How bad do you want to get dicked? That can then be shifted into the desire for devotion, desire for knowledge, desire for submission, desire for release, right? Because, you can kind of like bring somebody along with what they think they want and then give them what they need. I do this with my clients all the time. Like, it always starts off with, how do I fix the dead bedroom with my girlfriend? How do I get girls interested in me? How do I be a better lover? Okay. How do I be more like, how do I be a dominant, right? Or like get better with doing dominance. And whatever their problem is, that's what it's reeled in with. And I was saying, okay, yeah, you can have what you want. Come walk with me. And we keep walking, we keep talking. And over time, they don't like lose interest in their first desire, but it gets sort of like pushed to the side, and a new desire comes in, which really is me showing them what they actually need. And it's like, yeah, you like that other stuff and you can have that, certainly, but this is what you need. And then that becomes the changing process. And then through understanding and developing like how they can achieve their own needs, the wants become a reality. So I show them. I show the girls who are willing, open-minded, enthusiastic, coachable, that here, yes, I know you want this. And this is like great fuel, the sexual energy, right? Everybody loves sexual energy. It's great. But that can be utilized. That you can utilize. Sexual energy is one of the most potent things ever. Incredibly potent. And I was telling you about this client of mine who's just starting this transformation, like using that raw energy, and instead of just like sitting there like guzzling it down, right? Thinking like, okay, how can I use this myself in a different way? Like, yes, I love the taste of it. I love indulging and just filling my gullet with as much of this sexual energy as I can. But I realized it's potent. I listened to my mentor, and he, told me that it's more than what you think it is. And so he tries it, and and he became more vocal in the bedroom at first, just to get comfortable, just vocal at all. And then he was going for the easy stuff, right? You're my pretty little slut, like just regular stuff. Okay. Just getting himself warm and comfortable with giving commands. And I said, now, like, tell her to say stuff. And of course, it started with the dirty things because that's easy. That's more fun. So she's like, I'm your dirty little slut, right? Like, as she's getting pounded. And I said, okay, now tell her something that's truly helpful. You know her. You've been with her for a while. What does she need? What is she lacking within herself that she can benefit from hearing, like the truth? And so he, at the height of arousal, well, I mean, she's like, her brain is turning into cooked oatmeal, and he commands her to say, I'm perfect, over and over, while he's just blasting away, just pounding into her shaking all over her. She's completely retarded, but she keeps saying it over and over. And by the time she had orgasm, she was like on the verge of tears, because she's never allowed herself to feel that way. But because of the sexual energy, right, and of course the intimacy that they have with one another, he was able to open her because she trusts him and that sort of thing. So that ability to open and trust is there. The vulnerability is there. So then he was just in general throughout the relationship, but then taking that sexual energy and sort of taking advantage of that vulnerability and using it to something that is really impactful. And that impact of just blasting her subconscious, because that's what happens with the sexual energy. It opens up the subconscious. And so, basically her subconscious getting blasted with that phrase did way more for her than probably weeks of therapy. Weeks, because she was able to just quickly, it just opened her up, and she was able to release and accept, right? Release the emotions and accept the message that she was giving herself. So it's like auto hypnosis. And, but it's, it's not that softer, more like, hypnotic trance-like hypnosis. It's fast. hits like lightning. And so, that's just I'm really proud of him, of like how far he's come. And just I tell that story just to illustrate that, you guys have so much power in your presence, in your dick, in your words, in your cum, in your touch, the tone of your voice, how you think, what you say, everything, like your ideas, everything that comes out of you has the potential to be incredibly impactful on the woman who's trusting you. Incredibly impactful. And you just don't want to drop the ball. That's all. Just don't take it for granted. Don't take for granted that someone's trusting you, right? Because something that's open, it doesn't have a lot of forward motion. Vulnerability is like fairly, just kind of like just is. It's a state, right? So you have to actively participate with that state to move it into directions that are helpful and developmental. And this is part of being a good dom. It doesn't always have to be serious or clinical or therapeutic or whatever. I mean, a lot of things end up being therapeutic, even the stuff that doesn't seem like it on the surface. But, and I say that because, you can make things joyful, playful, happy, even like releasing of sadness as well. Fears, like basically like the full gamut of emotions, you can utilize and create different pathways into these things, right? I mean, I've had, not recently, but I've had moments of laughter that was so hard that it felt transformative, because it felt like just, my body took that opportunity to release. And you don't realize how much we kind of store in our bodies. We store in like tension, like muscular tension. So our emotions, they'll get kind of stored in our body. Not really, but it just causes tension. And so knowing that girls have fucking these minds that are always racing, going in many different directions, not really like grounding itself into like any particular position, right? It's just kind of skipping about. And this can lead to a lot of tension, a lot of emotional tension, psychological tension, physical tension. And so if a girl is trusting you, you can bring this into, something, really helpful for her. Man, fucking dog here. So, and the thing is, I imagine that some people will see this and go, "Oh my gosh, that's caping for some girl. What do you get out of it?" And I could understand that sentiment, because I guess it comes from a place of never truly having a woman give their trust to you. Like it's a rare thing, right? Like think about like throughout life, how many times, how many people just hand over massive amounts of trust to you and say, here, like with themselves, like I trust myself with you. Not like I trust my car with you. I trust you to watch my dog for the weekend. I trust you with my, my favorite pair of sneakers, but I trust you with me. That's a massive bargaining chip, right? Because there's transactions everywhere. I'm not going to be a transaction denier. Okay. Everything is a transaction between people, but some transactions are surface level where they're like, hey, I'm attractive. You're attractive. We could get together, fuck, not really get any kind of deep connection with each other, but we can boost our social media. We can do this, we can do that, and whatever. And I'm not going to expose myself to you, and you're not going to expose yourself to me, but we'll maintain this kind of, surface level transaction, and this can go through many levels. And so, with my sub, she and I have a transactional relationship. I give her things, she gives me things. It's just we don't give each other the same things, obviously, but they're of equal value. So she says, I'll give myself to you, my entire self, my body, my heart, my mind, my will, my focus, all of it. I give all of me to you. And then in turn, I'm giving her a place to put all that without it getting damaged. And that's the trade-off. And she, has her responsibilities and I have mine. And it's, it's not like an easy thing. Like I was listening to this one guy talking and he was like, when you kind of realize what it is to be a man, he's like, you don't get any days off. Never. You never have a day off. And so if you're not tending to someone else, okay, like covering someone else or guiding someone else, then it's yourself. And because once you get to a certain point of like, I don't know, mental clarity, understanding, and relationship, you really can't go back to sleep. You can't play yourself. You can't fuck around. Like bullshit is incredibly transparent. And so there's really just no days off ever. Which is also why it's good to be with a woman who has a good sense of service. I think that a woman who has a giving personality is invaluable. Absolutely invaluable, because maybe she knows or she comes to discover that there is no days off for you. Like even when you're, say, on vacation, right? Because you're always with yourself. And if she has this spirit, she'll understand, she'll know. There'll be gratitude for you basically never turning off. And she will do things. She'll want to, give you hand massages, foot massages. She'll want to wash you. She'll want to take care of your clothing. She'll want to do whatever, feed you. I don't know, whatever you like, whatever is either discovered or you tell her that you like. Maybe that relaxes you or takes away stress. Maybe you like to hear stories. So she, takes a favorite book of yours and reads it to you. Whatever it is, okay? But, it's important that the woman that you bring in order to exercise dominance, right? Let's say you go through what I read here. You bought some products, you've read some books, and you're like, I want to be that guy. Like, this sounds like a lifestyle that I want to do. Well, in order to like really make it a complete circle, the right person has to be there. And too many times, guys try to put a square peg in a round hole, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. I've been there. I've been there a couple of times, and I just know. And my ego used to trick me, and it used to say, "Well, if you were a better dom, you would be able to move her into submission." And that's just not the case. I'm a perfectly fine dominant, but it's like, it's like two different languages coming together sometimes, and they just can't understand each other. And that's okay, right? But it means like having discernment and saying, this is pretty obvious that it shouldn't be this hard. Okay, like creating a dynamic should not be difficult. Like it should feel like, I don't know if you ever had like a great collaborative experience, either collaborating to make a project or, maybe creating a song or a joint piece of visual artwork or a dance choreography or something like that. And, there's respective roles whenever you're doing that sort of thing. And, but the interplay between the two of you is seamless. It just fits. It's just like, all right, we are just vibing on this. And the direction becomes not a problem. Of course, like there's always, whenever you're creating something, especially with another person, there's going to be moments of hang up or a speed bump or something that needs to be sorted out. And that's just life. But the overall context is just like it's a seamless flow. So I've had that with some artist friends of mine doing collaborative paintings, collaborative music projects, and things of that nature. But I've also experienced the opposite, where it's not like I don't like you. I do. We just don't click on this level. We cannot co-create. And people will say, like in the context of, say, like being a leader, dominance, BDSM, that stuff, power dynamics, it's not a co-creation. They'll say that. And, it's all about you. And like it is, but in the sense, it's also not. Because if she's not there, what are you doing? Who are you leading? Okay. So by her being there and making the offering of saying, I am willing, this is the co-creation on her part. Like I always mention, like paintings. Okay. She is the canvas. If someone takes away the canvas, what painting are you making that isn't in your head? The canvas needs to be there as a participant in the creation of an image. It's a necessary component. Maybe not as bold and assertive as paint and brushes, but it's still a necessary component. And without it, you have nothing. You just got a handful of brushes. So I think that this is one of the components that perhaps I left out from what I read is gratitude. Right? I'm a big fan of gratitude, just the whole idea of it. I'm a big fan of gratitude coming from my sub, and that it's something to just constantly remember, that like it's good to have that mentality of just being gratitude or having gratitude towards not just everything that comes from me, but if I'm constantly having this input, and then she's constantly having this idea, this feeling, or verbally saying thank you, then that's just putting that more and more into her own life. Constantly having this state of gratitude being kind of sparked. Boom, boom, boom. Every single time I do something, say something. Okay. And then on the other side, on my side, again, like it's almost like thanking the canvas for being there. Because without it, what am I going to create? How? Right? If not that canvas, it would have to be another canvas or paper or whatever. It has to be there. So don't take that for granted, because it allows you a context to express yourself and grow something. And I'll say it's a pretty wild ride watching someone's psyche and their behaviors shift from maybe performance into presence of their own, like where they're showing up like more honestly, right? Because with performance, usually there's fear. And I don't mean like fear, like being scared, but more so let me just like call it discomfort or insecurity, where we're trying to cover up like our true self. Okay. And a lot of girls will do this. Like they'll put on this performance, like, they're extra cute, or like they're the subbiest sub that could ever be, or they're really standoffish, or they're really cautious. There's always some form of performance. And then as it goes on, that performance starts minimizing. It starts slowly crumbling away. And then you start seeing the presence underneath, and they get to show up by way of you showing them that it's safe for them to do so. So then that discomfort becomes comfort. The facade, the performance stuff, that all just starts going away. And by that, I mean the spirit of performance. So the actions might stay the same. Kneeling from performative is just kneeling. It looks cool, looks sexy, like it's fun, whatever. But then as there's that shift, and you're watching this shift, kneeling is a completely different act. It becomes something like almost like an entity of itself, or an extension of her presence. So this is, what can occur within her. And I'm telling you, like this, it's really, really cool. It's really it's awesome to see someone change this way. And, that's like, I'm encouraging guys. That's why I'm like kind of moving away from stereotypical stuff. Like, I know it's not going to be the best for numbers. Okay. But like, I'm tired of talking about bullshit that doesn't matter, like how to get girls. Like, nobody, like, you shouldn't give a fuck about that. And not in this pushing away sort of idea that a lot of guys have. When they say, I'm not going to give a fuck about girls, it's done out of resistance. Okay. Instead of just gently letting go. All right. And this is really important. I'm more interested in transformation, and getting what you want is not going to do anything for you. Right. Like, guys who are like, man, I just want to get laid. Like, if I would love it if I could have that power, for the guys who come to me, they say they've only been with say they're like 28 years old. They've only been with 2 girls, and they're like, man, I really want to have more sexual experiences. And so I go, okay, great. Boom. And just every Tuesday and Thursday, they have a new girl in their life. Every Tuesday and Thursday. Just magically, she just appears at his door. She's ready for whatever. And it's just like clockwork. I guarantee that the emotional thing, right, that's driving this strong desire for these so-called sexual experiences, which are really emotional experiences that they're after, I guarantee that he'll be left unsatisfied. After the novelty and the pleasure and the excitement or whatever wears off, and he realizes, it's just a series of wet holes, then then once the novelty wears off from that, and he's done this, he's done that, whatever, and then after a while it just starts becoming just all the same, he'll then realize, it'll become grossly apparent that he is still himself. He's still in the same emotional state, the same state of awareness, the same identity as when he first started, before I snapped my fingers. And then I can go, you satisfied yet? You happy? You anxiety free? No? Seems that you've grown a tolerance for that drug that you sought. And now It's lost its meaning, which I guess is good in a sense, because it's supposed to lose its meaning. But we had to do it the hard way. So I wish I had that ability so I could just quickly purge guys from this. And then it'll just be removed from their system. And then they can actually get to business. Kind of like that old story where, the father catches the son smoking, right? Steals like one of his dad's cigarettes. He say, "Hey, all right, you want to smoke, do you? Okay, come on." Take him out in the back of the house, and he's got a carton. He's like, "Okay, here, smoke them all. You can't come back home inside until you've smoked all of them." And by the time the kid smokes like 3 packs, and he's just puking. Right? Learns his lesson. It's like, I wish I had that ability to create such situations that would cause men to indulge so much they basically have to puke and say, "Okay, there, is it done? Are you done fucking being a child? And can we get to business on this man shit? Are you ready? Because I've been ready. And you keep paying me. So come on, let's get past this like female attachment, emotional neediness, like desire for validation and resisting this and thinking you're that. And, like, just drop it all and just come to me as blank as you possibly can." That's what Bruce Lee said when he was teaching students of, other martial arts and stuff. Because after he was getting fame, a lot of martial artists would come to him and say, "Damn, I want to be able to like move like Bruce." And he said, "I don't care what you've studied, right? It doesn't matter to me. Just when you come to me, empty your cup. That's all I ask. Pretend you know nothing." And that is the best way to go about learning anything. Even if you think you know what's going on, you approach it and you just empty your cup. Pretend you've forgotten, or pretend you've forgotten what you've learned, and just take in whatever. And that's the best way. But this is the path. Okay. Because, I was telling one of my guys yesterday that, while I am mentoring him, he's learning all of these skills. Like, as he's, removing the petals from his ego and thinning things out and seeing himself properly and managing the emotional defensive reactions to maintain his ego and all this stuff. And he's just kind of like coming to less noise and more stillness. And he's learning the tactics that I'm using with him. And he's observing the processes and kind of becoming, all right. And I told him that while I'm teaching this to you, your body and your mind are learning these things. Plus you're taking, all kinds of notes, that you are now becoming this person for your woman. So, I'm teaching you how to be a teacher as you are a student. And because this is your role. Your role is to teach, is to guide, is to cover, is to watch out. Okay. It's also to make her lick your shoes. I've got another one that I put in here. I just want to switch that up because it's fun. Where is it? Oh, yes. This one here. There we go. I'm a big fan of hand kissing. I just love that idea. Just offering the back of my right hand, and she can take it, or 2 hands, or no hands at all, and kissing the back of the hand. It's a good symbol, right? It's good to have rituals, right? I think that people in relationships, they don't realize like how powerful they can make rituals. And it's just small things, Like even just like I said, there's simple things that you can put into practice that make your bonds stronger, whether you've got a dynamic or not. You can start putting conscious effort into creating structure. And like say like one of them is like good mornings, good nights, check-ins, just simple things about time. This is what I'm doing today. And just having her share this with you. These are basic things that like each time it's done, it's just like one more Lego that gets stacked, right? Every single time. And each time it just gets bigger, stronger, And you think it doesn't, but it does. And that's the power of ritual. Okay. Because usually the things done, well, not usually, but many times in rituals, it's just a simple act. There's nothing crazy about it. It could be just like lighting a candle and that's it, right? There's nothing crazy about putting fire to a wick. There's, like when a Catholic goes into a church, right? They remove their hat, they kneel at the pew, cross themselves, and then they sit. Really simple. But you do this again and again and again, day after day, year after year, and it just strengthens everything. Okay. Now, of course, you can always go the way of more elaborate rituals. And, that's great too. You can have all sorts of things. And this is something I've helped people who have had dynamics and they've kind of run a little stagnant. So I'm like, okay, well, just add more detail. I said, well, how does your sub greet you when you come home? And she says, well, she's always just kneeling at the door. Okay. So be more descriptive, break it down and get more specific. What is she supposed to look like in detail? Her hair, her makeup, her outfit, shoes or no shoes. Okay. Clothing or no clothing. How's she supposed to smell? Where are her eyes supposed to be? Looking up at you and waiting for you, or cast down at the floor? Should she be holding something? Or should her hands be behind her back or on her knees or palms up? Like, get really detailed. Do you want her to say anything when you arrive? As some sort of like mantra that every single time you come home, she says the same thing. I mean, think about it in regular, like vanilla relationships. Hi, honey, I'm home. Right? Say it's a ritualistic mantra. And so why not just utilize that? Make it work for you instead of just doing because. You know what I mean? So this is also like part of being in dominance. Like you start paying attention to everything that can be utilized to help strengthen things and make the narrative more immersive. And because that's what you're doing, you're basically saying, I'm the narrator of my relationship and I want to write it this way. I'm going to add detail, not all at once because that becomes overwhelming, but just over time, adding more and more detail, more adjectives, more adverbs, right? Making things more fleshed out. Just like, reading, say like an erotic story. Okay. There's some that are very basic. And then there are others that are written so well, you get pulled into the world. Like you can almost smell the things that they're describing, that the characters are smelling and tasting and feeling. And so as you go along, you can always add more detail, tighten it up, and things like that. All stuff to think about. Oh, yes, I remember this. Yep. Yeah, Brewster's Millions. That's, Brewster's Millions. That's a great movie. You guys should watch that. That was like a great time period for movies, man. Like the mid 80s. So good. But yeah, he got all that money and he had to spend it, but he couldn't have anything to show for it. So it's not like he could buy like a bunch of, jet planes all at once and get rid of it. He couldn't have anything there. And I think he couldn't donate all of it. Maybe he could donate some, but not everything. Yeah, it was very interesting. I might watch that again very soon. Yeah. But yes, the lesson there is the same as what I was talking about with the dominance and pleasure. Well, thank you, Mitch. Where'd you go? Yes. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so, I know like that's got to be like I said, it's a pipe dream for guys. They're like, oh yeah, must be nice to get sick of pussy. When a guy's like, he's 35 and he's a virgin. You know what I mean? Like, all right, I get it. Like, I'm sympathetic to that perspective. And I could say, trust me, you're not really missing out on anything stupendous. Okay. And the reason why it's perceived as stupendous is because of our attachments and the emotional pathways that you've grown over the years with regard to sex. Attached to it can be loneliness. Attachment could be, a means of being seen, a means of being valued, a means of someone giving a shit about you. There's a bunch of stuff. Okay. Feeling like a man. Okay. Feeling desirable, feeling visible. There's a lot of important things, and those things are important, but it's funny how guys will seek this stuff through sex and not even realize it. That's the funny part, is that they won't realize it, but that's what they're looking for. They're looking for an opportunity to be seen. I don't mean like in the ego sense, like, look at me, like here I am on social media, but being seen as like a human, right? And of course they would never admit that, but that's what's going on. That's the shit that's actually happening, But the thing is, it's funny because like I said, like you always are leading as a man, always. And so, you can't tell her to let go and trust you. Like if you haven't let go and trust you, like why would she trust something that clearly you're not trusting? Oh, you guys are crazy, And I don't mean like forcing yourself to, or having some sort of bravado about, or strong arming yourself into trusting yourself. Okay. Like I said, a lot of the developments, especially at first, when it comes to manhood, is a process of letting go. Yep. Just a process of letting go. And because of the discomfort and the challenge of sometimes having to untie certain emotional attachments, belief attachments, and things like that, it takes trust to do these things, right? Because oftentimes there's fear behind this. And so, that's where you learn it. That's where you learn to trust yourself, trust your gut. Like it's going to be okay, right? I can expose myself to my own insecurities and things of that nature. My own fears, the things that, I'm ashamed of, or whatever, whatever you're holding on to. And, one guy, he was carrying like so much stuff about his dad, tons of it. And the little kid, the belief that he come to believe, all right, when he was a kid, was that the emotional fallout that came from, the daily situations, was that it was his fault. And he walked around for decades with this idea that the way his dad treated him was his fault. And then he didn't realize how that connected to a whole host of behaviors that were just kind of strung together with this little thread that was going all the way back in time to when he was a child. And I showed him, right? I showed him how these things are connected by this thread. And, once he had that realization and understood how this stuff was affecting his own behaviors with himself and his behaviors with his girlfriend, that he was able to then come to terms, with the idea that his dad's just a guy, and it certainly wasn't his fault, right? And so, it wasn't him, my client's fault to himself, right? But also, we don't want to shift blame to the dad, because we're realizing that he himself is carrying around all this stuff, which then altered, perceptions and behaviors. His dad too was carrying around stuff which altered perceptions and behaviors. And so can you really, unless they did damage or whatever, but still, it's like you have to have a little bit of compassion in these situations, because you can't fault somebody for not knowing themselves, right? And yes, it doesn't absolve them of any wrongdoings, but it just helps give you perspective of what's that phrase? Forgive them, Lord, for they not know what they do, or some shit like that. It's something along those lines. If someone doesn't have self-awareness, can you really fully blame them for the actions that they're doing? You can, to a certain degree, but you also know that it's due to a profound lack of self-knowledge. And it's how do you blame somebody for being invisible to themselves, especially if no one's shown that to them, right? Or if their pain is so great that there is incredible guarding against seeing oneself. People say, oh, you got to take accountability. Yeah, well, if they've got highly reflective armor, then it's not getting in. No way in hell. It's funny. I used to, in my younger years, I was into role-playing games, like Dungeons and Dragons and shit like that. But I wasn't really into the fantasy stuff. Maybe a little bit, but not much. And I was really into this one game called Rifts, Rifts. And it was about this, dimensional holes and different beings, races, aliens, sci-fi stuff, all kinds of things, dimensional monsters. And there was this coalition, and they were sort of this highly organized militant group that was trying to basically manage all of this shit. And there was this one group, faction, maybe a platoon, called the Glitter Boys. That's what their nickname was. And they had this armor that was all chrome. The whole thing was chromed out. And they had this giant cannon on their shoulder. And it was really cool. But I just, when I thought of that, this reflective armor reminded me of that illustration of the Glitter Boys. It's a cool name too. These ass-kicking, cannon-wielding armored warriors called Glitter Boys. I like that shift. Yes. Oh, good dumb shapes. Oh, nice flower. Good dumb shapes a good submissive. Greatness is inspired, not demanded. Indeed. Yes, this girl isn't claiming to be a perfect sub yet, but she is a steady one, growing, refining, and offering more of herself each day. Mr. Justin here is the proof of that. Thank you, darling. Yeah, there is no real perfection. I think we know that if we're not full of ourselves, right? That it's just always a process of growth. We can't get into this idea, and I'm not saying we being, in my sub, but everybody, is that we can't fall into the mentality of not being good enough, Okay, because that sinks your energy, makes you slow. All right, the vibrations get slower and lower, and so we can't fall prey to that type of thinking, like, oh, I'm not good enough, right? Because you can. It's just a matter of like how you perceive things. Okay, so if you kind of realize that you've got more to work on, whatever the skill is, it doesn't matter. Not doesn't have to be relationship related at all. And you realize that you've got more work to do, you can just plainly, objectively say, I've got more work to do. Or you can look at it in a positive light and go, wow, I've got so much more to learn. I'm really excited about that. Or you can take the negative route and go, man, I'm not as good as I thought I was. Like I'm not good enough. And get really down on yourself for just being where you are and realizing there's an endless mountain in front of you. So really, I would go with the objective or the positive. Don't fall prey to negative thoughts because it really just doesn't do anything for you. You got to kind of pull out that hatchet and stop those thoughts in their tracks. Just like when I see thoughts and behaviors, words of my own, of my clients, of my submissive, anything that comes out that is not conducive towards forward movement, myself, clients, and her, the hatchet comes out immediately, and with a fast cut. No, that's not allowed. Change it. Change what you've just said, right? And I say this to myself. I stop the thoughts, right? Because there's no good use at all for negative, critical, judgmental, defeating thoughts, because they always carry an emotion. And when emotions get involved, it pulls you further into those directions. Right. And then immediately, like, you can't just say stop. Okay. Because that's not enough. It's not enough to have the barrier and saying this isn't allowed. You have to offer the other side of like what to do with that energy then. Because it's kind of like you tell the person stop and then they say, well, what then? Right? Excuse me a second. Okay. Sorry about that. So, so it's not enough to just say no and to put the barrier up for what's not allowed. You have to put direction of what is allowed. And so that's with your dynamics, that's with yourself, that's with my clients. It's always a correction, right? You can't just say stop. That's not good enough. All right, the direction has to be corrected. So that's why I say that the two of the three main tools that you must carry is the hatchet and the compass. The hatchet to stop the unwanted, and the compass to show what is wanted, the right direction. And you can literally put in the thoughts using your own mantras, your own affirmations, your own controlling of your own thoughts, just in the same way that you would with anyone else. It's the same sort of stuff, right? A mind is a mind, okay? And you can easily use the same kind of thing, the positive reinforcements. You can use anchors on yourself. Like, you can give yourself small rewards, like say you were to do something, and then you have a repeated small reward that's after that. So then when you do the thing or have the positive thought or whatever, you include dopamine. And then the brain is learning, okay, when I think like this or when I do things like this, I feel good. And then after a while, you don't need that treat or that reward in order to feel good. You begin to remove it. Okay. And so, like, I do this a lot with, I do this with my sub, I do this with my clients, I do this with myself. Simple stuff. right? It's not that complex. Just look into Pavlov and what he figured out with the dog. It's really quite simple. The idea, though, is to be consistent. That's the tricky part. And then you become inconsistent. Like, why are you changing things up? Yeah, that's the idea. Okay, because the human mind is incredibly adaptive. Like, the human mind's amazing. It can take so much. I mean, think about the people who have gone through awful, awful things in their lives for years on end, and they're still here. Like, they're still just like going to work, having families, doing this, doing that, and they tell you what they've been through, and it's like, you're still here. Like, the mind adapted. The mind was like, okay, I'm going to figure out ways to handle this pressure, to handle this pain, to handle this fear, to handle this anger, whatever it is, and just adapt. And so, with that in mind, if you keep a thing too consistent, then it starts losing its impact. And so, so I had, this one guy, he observed this. So he was, telling his girl, good girl, like, all the time, because she was learning new things. And like, I was like, all right, that's fine. But then he observed, like, in her, because his awareness was growing, so he could see and like feel those subtle shifts in his woman, where it kind of didn't have the same sort of impact. And he noticed in himself that saying it didn't have the same kind of impact. I said, so stop and watch what happens. And he stopped, and almost immediately her behavior changed, which then kind of like he was already woken up because he was trying something new and observing and to see what would happen. So he was kind of on alert. But when he stopped that input, it kind of like shook her out of that state, kind of like droning. And because her brain was so used to hearing good girl for doing this action, learning this, doing that. And it kind of like a small shock, wake up. And her brain was like, wait a second, there's something missing here. I didn't hear it. Does that mean I'm a bad girl? I didn't hear a good girl. Did I do something wrong? Is everything like, and now she starts paying attention to her actions in a completely different way. Like, it reawakened the paying attention part. I was like, well, I've folded the things just right. I made the coffee at the right time. I did this, like, what's going on? And so there's like a scanning going off, right? And saying, is everything all right? Am I on point? And it woke her up. And now she's a little bit on edge. And I explained that to him. I said, listen, now she's going to, like, you can't let her sit in that state for too long thinking that she's fucked up and doesn't know how, especially since when she does, you always bring it to her attention. So now she's like, wait, I feel like something's wrong, but he hasn't said anything. And so I was like, listen, you can't let her sit for too long in that state of confusion, because it'll start like spiraling out. Okay. And we don't want that. It's unnecessary. But just like give it a couple days. I just kind of let that simmer for a little while, and then nonchalantly, don't make a discussion about it or anything like that. Just bring it back. And boom, like that, the phrase good girl for doing the thing, it was like, oh, I get that little hit. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so like, the little girl was so happy to hear it again, right? Because she had woken up. So it's important to kind of like be aware of your patterns, okay? Like, it's so easy. And this is what I mean by you don't get any off days. You have to be observing stuff, because when you don't, you fall into monotony. And then energy suffers, connection suffers. Like, we're not hardwired, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't just take like a cable, you know what I mean? I can't just like take a USB and just like hardline. I mean, maybe in the future, hardline myself like this and take the other end and, click into my girl's pussy and say, all right, this is it. There's a hardline connection and off we go. Right. So because there's no hardline, it has to be done in other ways. You have to cultivate the connection, this unseen thread. And in order for that thread, you want to have that like a guitar string. It's got to have the right kind of tension on it so it twangs nice, right? If there's not enough tension, then it's not going to vibrate. It's not going to vibrate the way it needs to. And if it's too tight, then it might snap. So you have to put in just enough energy and attention and awareness so that it maintains within a range of good tension all the time. And it helps for you to enjoy the tension, enjoy cultivating tension. And I told you guys, one of the best ways is to learn to leash your lust. Gosh, that sounds like a dumb t-shirt, leash your lust. I think I'm like some religious zealot though. But seriously, because that's the first and most easiest, most crude way to gain self-control. And then that energy, that sexual energy of like, oh, I just want to fuck, right? That has to go somewhere. Okay. So then it's like, okay, what can I do? And that's when you can take that energy and start creating tension lines that invigorates the energy between the two people. And it makes that string twang again. But it requires consistent maintenance, And also like if the sub becomes acutely aware of the needfulness of the necessity of said tension, she can then invite it or inspire it or something along those lines. But it has to be really subtle, because if she's doing it too much, then that means he's not paying attention enough. And then if it goes too far, then she starts driving from the back seat. She starts topping from the bottom. She starts guiding things so that they stay within good tension. And that's not good, right? That's not her job. It's fine if she wants to like participate so that she kind of can utilize some of her own energy. And that's great. But if that shifts too far onto her end, it's not going to work out well. It really isn't, because it's not their role. And eventually it will become, I wouldn't say burdensome, but draining. It will pull energy out of them. And that's not what you want. Okay. You want that energy to be poured into the dynamic, poured into you, poured into themselves. Okay. Not managing the tension between you, but a little bit's fine. That's perfectly okay. And some, like if you've ever met a brat, like bratty subs, they do this very well. They have the, just that keen ability to poke. They like poking the bear. They're like, come on, you're not gonna bite me. You're just a big softy. I'm gonna call you Teddy from now on. And I don't like those situations. I used to really enjoy some brattiness, some playful brattiness. But what I found is that either it gamifies the dynamic, okay, where now I turn into sort of like this caricature that's playing along with this, like, if I want to play along with that narrative, okay, and then there's the other element of it where it's like, if that's how she is and she's constantly just in this state, because no shame on the woman, but it comes from like wanting to be put in their place, Okay, not to be shown their place, but to be like grabbed and put in their fucking place. And I get that. Like I get the desire and the allure and just like that. I get it where that's coming from, right? The taste, right? The hunger for that kind of taste. And that's fine. Okay. But it's very instigating. Okay. And instigating is a first position. Okay. Like instigating isn't a reaction. Okay. It's proactive. And that, if taken too far, can become topping from the bottom. Eventually, the dom is following the sub, right? The sub is saying, I want his like forceful, powerful energy, and I'm going to find fun, creative, and playful and annoying ways to get that. And for sure, some doms, they love getting themselves embroiled in that sort of dynamism. And that's fine, but I think maybe they don't realize or they don't care, which is also very fine. But they don't realize, I think, that the sub is leading. The sub's taking charge and saying, this is the type of experience that we're going to be having. And if you don't want it, then you're going to have to beat it out of me. That's cool and all, but it's like, I don't know. I don't, maybe it's my age, but it's like, I don't have the time or the patience to fuck around like that. I'm getting to a point where I'm like one of those old guys just sitting on the porch and he yells at the little kids for being on his lawn. He's like, get off my lawn, sitting on the porch with a shotgun and his dog in a bathrobe and slippers. Yeah. So maybe it has something to do with that, but really, I just don't want to deal with that psychological complexity of like who's doing what, who's in charge, like this, that. It's like, no. Like, I understand some people like that, but like, why? Just make things clear and let's go somewhere. Let's do something. Let's create something, right? Instead of this like 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of thing. It's like that, I imagine, gets old. Now, play, that's a different story. Okay. Totally different story. If there's like girl you meet up with like once a week or twice a week, you guys have some sexy playtime, and she's this bratty little girl and you're the brat tamer, and that's how you guys get down, perfectly fine. But if you've got a dynamic that you're in, that's a 24/7 live-in dynamic, it would have to be maybe like one of those couples that are constantly playing pranks on one another. And, underneath it all, she's still like, yes, he's the leader, which I've heard is the case, right? Like underneath, there's still the respect and the loyalty and reverence for the dom. It's just on top of that, it's like we've got these layers here on top to get to that. So, all right, I'm going to pull this to a close and have myself get into my relaxation mode. All right, so thank you for coming through on the live, and thank you for watching me on the replay. I appreciate it. And look out for I think Monday night is when I'm going to be back in, and have a whole new stream for you. Until then, check out the website, thedominance.academy.com, and hit that big button in the top right on the main page that says schedule for a free consultation, so we can get in touch, talk about what's going on with you or what's going on with your relationship, and we can get things fixed and going in the right direction, that everyone is satisfied, everyone's growing, everyone's happy. Okay, until then, we will talk to you next time, and I'm out.